Hello everyone, my name is Debashish Roy. I'm the Senior Network Analyst at the Indian Cybersecurity Solutions, and I welcome you all to this special webinar today. And today's topic is Cisco iOS CLI Fundamentals and Device Configuration. So we'll talk about how to configure the basic commands, that is the iOS CLI fundamental of the CLI, that is the command line interface, and how to do the basic configurations, say the host name, say the IP address, these things. So let's discuss in detail. So we'll cover the Cisco iOS CLI basics, and we'll learn navigation, configuration, and management skills associated for the CLI for the network engineers and admins. So you can access the Cisco CLI with the console port using the 960 baud rate. You can telnet and SSH here. So everything it is practically you have to do. And telnet is not used so much. SSH is used because it's encrypted. Auxiliary port it is used to connect modem, that is not used nowadays much. SSH you have to configure host name, domain, generate RSA keys that we have done already yesterday, and you have to set the username and enable SSH with line VTY04 configuration. So these are the configuration to access, say, your router switch remotely. Then you have to understand the CLI structure. There is a user executive mode, the basic monitoring, limited commands that you can use to view the configuration. Then the privilege executive mode for the full commands or configuration access. So basically when your router boots, I'll show you in a minute, it will enter the user executive and then it will go to the privilege executive and the global config modes, where you have the system wide settings of the global configurations, every configuration, universal configuration, say the routing or any other configuration you can do in this global config mode. And interface configuration for the interface specific commands, a sub interface also is used in order to say you are configuring, say, VLANs or that. Then basic iOS commands means show version, it will show you the system information, version, uptime, hardware, say the iOS version you want to know. Then the running config and startup config to view the current and saved configuration. Running config is when your router is running. In the uptime, you are seeing the configuration, and the startup config it is saved in the NVRAM. Running config in the DRAM, dynamic RAM, and startup config in the NVRAM. Non-volatile RAM, it is permanently saved configuration. Then to save the configuration from the running config to the startup config, you have to give this copy run start, copy running config, startup config. Enable and configure terminal access modes for configuration. So you have to do the en or enable and the config t that I will show you in a minute. Ping and trace route, diagnose network connectivity, and question mark for any command reference you will use. Now in the interface configuration, use interface and the type and the number to select the interface configuration. Say you are entering the gigabit Ethernet or fast Ethernet, you have to give interface F0 by 0 or gigabit 0 by 0, like that. The any interface number it will change. As an IP address like this, set IP and subnet mask, enable interface to use no shutdown because interface is not up by default, it is shut down, so you have to make it up. And you can add description, and you have to verify with show IP interface brief to see the IP address and the status of the interface. Basic routing, if you do the routing, then you have to activate the IP routing globally. With IP routing, if you disable the IP routing, definitely you will not be able to do the routing, or you cannot view the routing table. View routes, if you configure the static routes later, it is a bit advanced, but if you configure it, then you have to see the routing table using show IP route. Static route you have to define using IP route, then destination network, subnet mask, and next hop address. Dynamic routing, with you have to briefly mention the EIGRP and OSPF protocols for automated routing. Any dynamic protocols you have to do. Then in the basic security configuration, you have to enable the enable secret or the any password to set the encrypted enable password. Then console line, you have to configure the console password and enable login in the, say, the console password that we have already done yesterday. Banner MOTD, that is a message of the day. You can set some specific, say, warnings or some logs. So login warning banner you can create with custom message. Then VTY lines, you can set the VTY password, so enable login and restrict access to SSH. So you can enable telnet, SSH, all these things. So these are the very basic things, and you can also save and backing up your configuration. To save configuration, I've already told you, you have to give the command copy run config startup config to save into NVRAM. You can back up to the TFTP in order to say backup the Cisco IOS from the router switch to the TFTP server to specify certain IP address and file name. Backup importance, regular backups you have to do because it will protect you against the data loss and enable the rollback. Say any rollback means the recover process. Restore config, load startup config to recover device settings when needed. So all these things you have to do. So this is about the, you can say, the theory part regarding this very Cisco IOS basic commands and device configuration. Then let me take you to the simulator of Cisco packet tracer here to show you one or two basic commands here. See, the router is booting and you are present with, you would like to enter the initial configuration dialog or not. Do not enter there because it's a very basic mode. It will prompt you one by one to configure, say whether you want to configure this or that, you want to configure interface, you want to configure. If you even press no, it will not be like say I'm entering the yes. Can you see, would you like to enter the basic management setup? If I give no, even then it will ask you to see the current interface summary. You have to press Y. So this way you cannot configure. So what you do not configure this way, and you go to the physical. Here is I'm zooming in. This is the power button. Again, restart this. Go to the CLI, and then we'll give no there, and we'll enter the privileged executive mode. Here give no. Press enter. In the router, this is the user config mode, and here you give the N or enable to enter the privilege executive. This is the privilege executive mode. Here you can view the show, say, running configuration. Say this is a show run, means the running configuration you are viewing. Say every interface, there is no IP address or nothing is that, because it is a brand new router that you have bought. Say for example, also alternatively show startup configuration is not present because you haven't saved anything in the startup config in the environment yet. Now let's configure it. So to do that, go to global configuration mode, conf space T, or the configuration terminal, that is the full term. You give the commands. I'm showing you some commands. Host name, say you give ICSS, that is a host name, so you can see that the router prompt is changed to the ICSS. So any host name you can set up. Say you can go to the interfaces now, F0 by 0. You can no shut, means no shutdown. You are switching up the interface, and you can give the IP address right away 1001, and the subnet mask can be this one, say the default mask or any other mask. So you have given the IP address here in the interface configuration mode, and then end with Control Z. So you can end this configuration. So with Control Z or end, you can write end, or you can give Control Z and enter. So you are back to the privilege executive mode here, and you give the copy run space start. Ordinarily, you can give the full form, that is a copy running hyphen configuration space startup hyphen configuration, but let it be very small because you have to configure a lot in your exams and your production environment, right? So definitely you have to give the short form, enter and enter. So it is saving in the startup configuration. So now the startup configuration is built. So let's see, show start or startup, and you can see, yes, there you are. So the first Ethernet is 0 by 0. So everything you can see the IP address, so everything is set. And already I have shown you yesterday also, you can go to the config mode. You can say go to line console 0. We set up the console password, and then the password, say anything 123, and you activate it with the login or any password you can set. Again Control Z, again copy run start. So any configuration you do, you have to save it, and again check it out with the show startup configuration, and you should see the passwords there. And yes, there you go, line console and password and login. So any configuration you do, even if you set the V2I password there also, you will see it. Let me do it. Line VTY 0 space 4. Now what is this 0 space 4? These are the line numbers. From 0 to 15, I already told you there are 16 lines. So 16 users can simultaneously log into this telnet. So you can give say 0 space 1 also. So in that case, 2 users will be used. Now you can give the password here again, say anything, say Cisco, and again login. You have to give the login, that is mandatory. And you can alternatively give the end or Control Z, and again copy, run, start. And in the packet tracer, let me tell you that there is another option to save, that is write. Same thing. But in the real router, you cannot do this. You cannot give this short from the write. But in packet tracer, you can do it. So in show start, again you can see that all these configurations are there. And there you go, in the line VTY01, you have the password also. So this all the configurations is saved now in the NVRAM. So this is the initial configuration here you have. And if you see show IP root, you see that nothing is there because uh, the 0 by 0 fast Ethernet interface is not connected, I think. So what you do, you take a PC, connect it with a cross cable this time because it's PC to router, and there you give the IP 002 and the default mask. And now if I see show IP root, you can see. Can you see the connected root? That is 1000. It was not showing because the fast Ethernet interface, although it was up, it was not connected. But now the routing is enabled. No other router is connected, so you cannot see the static route or that. But as a basic, we will not configure it here. But let me show you one more thing. If you want to disable the routing, you have to give this command, no IP routing. It is not taking in this packet tracer. Okay, the packet tracer doesn't support this command, no IP routing. But if you do it in the real router, then you see that you can actually disable the IP routing. So if you give no IP routing, then the routing table you will not be able to see. But in packet tracer, it is not supported. Now I can show you, say, let's take the console cable access. Let's take this one is a console cable. You connect it to the PC and you connect it not to the USB port, it doesn't support that. You connect to the RS232, that is a serial interface, 9-pin serial, and you connect to the router interface, that is the console. Now this is a very real one because in real life you configure it this way. In real life you use a software like PuTTY, but here you cannot do the PuTTY here, but here you configure the console cable the same way. So you go to the router or the PC rather, and you close this IP configuration. You go to the terminal. These are the bit per second. I told you the data rate 9600 bit and baud rates are there. Just keep it the same. Do not change anything. Click on OK, and there you go. You have the console. You have the same console here. Can you see? You can have the same console here in the router. So you can access the routers here by this console cable access, or alternatively in the packet tracer you can definitely click on the router switch icon and definitely you can go to the CLI, the same thing. But in the real world, definitely you can access the router switch or any other device, network device, with the PuTTY, and here you have to configure it, and by accessing it out you are connecting it with the console cable. So now configure, let's say, the date and time. So again you go to the control set and the privilege executive mode, and here you gave the command. So in here you have to give the, say, the show, say, clock. First verify the time, it is not set correctly, so you set it with clock set, clock space set, not in the global config but in the privilege executive. It is an exception. You can say clock set, and the hour, minute, second, say the 12 hour is minute is 0 and second is also 0, and it is coordinated with the UTC now. Now I'm not changing the say the time zone, but although you can change it, but it is not supported in packet tracer fully, but in real router you can change it. And day, let's say the 13th May, and it is 2025 the year. And now again give show clock. You can see that yes, the time is now reflecting correctly. Again you have to run the copy run start. So each time you configure it, you configure something, you have to mandatorily run the copy run start command. And so again I can show you some more basic commands that we have discussed, like you want to know the iOS version name. Show version, sh means the show version. And you can see that iOS file, system image file, is it is in the flash memory. That is why it is giving you flash. Colon means this is the name. This is the name that you can also copy. Say if you are if you are taking a backup, you just go to the notepad, and for your reference you have to copy that. You have to just paste that. It's not copied yet. Copy, and now paste. Yes. So this is your iOS file name. So if you are say taking backup of the iOS to the TFTP server, so in that case you can copy this. And TFTP server is a bit advanced thing, but let's say I am say canceling this. Take a server. IP address let be same 1002. You can change it also. And in the services, you can check it out. There is a TFTP. And there are so many routers iOS file images, although it is a demo only, and the TFTP server status is on. But these .bin files are the iOS, and this is the only demo. There is no such real iOS here, the packet tracer, but your iOS will be saved here like this. So you have to actually, you can take the backup with the copy, flash, and then the TFTP. So it will ask you for the source file name that you have already know. This is the file name of the iOS file name of the router. So that is why you copy it and you paste that. Then the address or name of remote host means the TFTP server IP 02, and destination file name you can keep it as the same one, because if you keep it then it will be saved in the same name. Otherwise you can change it. Say I want to say give a different name, say CCNA, you can do it, and it will definitely take the backup. It is taking, so it is taking the backup. And one thing has to remember, that you should not place any other device, intermediate device, like the switcher. If you say place any switcher between the say this server and the router, it will not happen, because in the case of this real time, this this backup of the iOS, you have to directly connect that. So now here also you can see in the services, you have to, let's say again you go to the TFTP, and here you go, that is the CCNA, that is the router iOS file that you have. So later also you can take the back of the restoration you can do of the iOS. So these are the very basic things that you have to do. And yes, you can check the IP status and the IP address information with the show IP interface and brief. In the real router, you can also give show IP interface summary. Here you can give show IP interface brief with the interface first and the 0 having the 1001 method is manual and set is up, and all other interface serials are shut down. So these are the very basic commands that I have shown you, and most of the basic commands I have showed you already. So I think you will be able to configure this when you say procure a new router, and most of the commands are applicable for router and switch both. So that is about the basic or the initial configuration of the say the Cisco router switches, and others say the routing and other configurations like VLAN is a bit advanced. So that is all I have for you now about the Cisco IOS CLI fundamentals and device configurations, where I have literally talked about in theoretical aspect. Also, I've shown you practically almost every basic CLI configurations of the Cisco router. So I hope that you'll be able to implement it in the production environment as well. And it's very important for your CCNA and CCNP studies, mainly the CCNA 200301, and also for your job prospect as a network engineer, because you have to configure the routers, which is basic configurations first, anywhere in any place in your job. And the network is always a rewarding career, as you know, in the routing switches. That is definitely will give you a lot of confidence in your career move. So I thank you all for watching and joining this webinar once again. And I will come with some new topic next time. Till then, keep studying and bye.